One second. This one.
Mm.
Ready? Right?
Anything? We've covered every woman in our has been everywhere she's been. Here's another card. Isn't there usually another card in here?
Baby. Aww. Aww. You find all the towels on it. Mm. I guess that's the sound again. Did I tell you that?
Stop by 6 minutes.
So, you said you was thinking about coming. Was there any truth in anything you said?
That's true.
Really? Where'd you from? Yeah, this one. Okay. Shredding it.
The one that was being adapted.
Oh, you mean for him, right?
No, nothing for.
Yeah. What?
That's 4 months from. Right?
Yeah, 4 months. I'm talking about performance properly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, I need to do this. Yeah. Sorry.
Yes. Eating.
No. It's interesting enough from what it's listening.
I see. I think you listen to interesting night.
What?
Interesting.
Remember that dare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well,
Yeah.
Was hostile to you personally, and you thought you were going to help him, but yet you also felt you needed a backup, an former Army infantryman to protect you. Fair?
Yes.
And yet when he's gone, and you can't find him, you don't immediately go back, right?
I looked for him for a second, and then I think max I looked for him for like 3 minutes, and then I tried to go back.
And when you couldn't get back straight across the police lines, did you decide to try and go around the police lines? For example, the ultimate gas station is here at 68th and Cherry. Why didn't you walk down the street here and go over this way and around?
I don't know.
Why didn't you and go around?
I don't know. It was very close in time that I was heading back. That I was turned down by the police before I got the phone call from Dominic Black. So I guess I didn't have time to really think like which ways I could go around.
You knew the layout of downtown Kenosha, right? Because you said you drove that area the whole time, right?
A little bit.
So you go over to the ultimate gas station and you spend some time talking with folks that are there who are similarly dressed as you. They've got similar clothing, similar weapon, things like that.
Right, similar weapons. I wouldn't say similarly dressed.
But you went over there because you felt that those were people doing something similar to what you were doing that night.
I thought that would be the safest spot for me to go.
Why did you think you'd be safe with those people?
Because I was alone and they were, like I said, you're better in pairs, and I didn't want to be alone in that situation.
You didn't want to be alone out here with this crowd that we see on the screen right now.
I did not want to be alone with them.
You wanted to be with the group at Ultimate Gas that have AR-15s like you, right?
I wanted to be back at the car stores where there weren't people around
Right, and we talked about that, but initially you go to Ultimate Gas,
to look for Ryan, yes.
but you also talk to people who have AR-15s just like you, right?
I wouldn't say I talked to them. I asked after the phone call, I asked the guy for a fire extinguisher to come with me.
Let's play exhibit number 11 at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. This is the Corey Elijah live stream when he's in the Ultimate Gas lot. Mr. Rittenhouse, that's Ryan Walsh standing there in the Ultimate Gas lot, correct?
Yes.
Let's play this video. I don't know. We just saw you run through this video, correct?
Yes.
I started this video at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. It is now paused at the 54-minute and 56-second mark. So for 26 seconds, Corey Elijah has Ryan Walsh on screen, center of this video during that entire time, right?
Yes.
And you run right past where Corey Elijah is standing, right?
Yes.
And Ryan Walsh is loitering there in the middle of the screen for at least 26 seconds, right?
That's what it looks like on the screen.
And your testimony is you were trying your best to find Ryan Walsh at the Ultimate Gas Station at this point because you needed him to protect you.
I was looking for Brian Balch, but I didn't notice him as I was running away. No, not running away, running towards Car Source 3.
But for 26 seconds before you start running, he's standing right there, isn't he?
Yes, and when he's standing right there, before I run with the fire extinguisher, I'm over here on the phone with Dominic Black.
How long was your phone call with Dominic Black?
About 30 seconds.
So before that, you've been looking for Ryan Walsh.
Before that, I tried to get back to the car source lot number 1.
And you'd also been looking for Ryan Walsh
Looking, seeing if I can see him in the crowd of people
because you wanted a partner, a buddy to protect you.
to protect each other, yes.
And in fact, when you borrowed that fire extinguisher, you asked someone in that group to come along with you, right?
Yes.
Because you wanted someone there to protect you when you go down and put out what you think are some fires, right?
Yes.
Because you know that you're running into a crowd that is not friendly to you, right?
No.
That's why you had to say the word friendly, 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 because you knew this was a crowd that would not see you. In the crowd, a hostile reaction, correct?
I didn't think it would cause a negative reaction. I wanted somebody to come with me because you're better in pairs, and I thought there were other people at that car source before I got there.
Well, Dominic, if you're telling us that Dominic Black called you to run 3 blocks down the road to put out a fire at the 63rd Street car source, then you must have known at that moment that there wasn't anyone else down there, right? Why would you need to go? Somebody's already down there.
Mr. Black said to me on the phone, hey, they're setting fires at the other car source. I need you to get down there and put out the fires. It must not have, I took it as there's not other people down there.
Why would you need to go 3 blocks down if there were already people there?
So,
He's asking a question. This witness doesn't want to answer whether there are people there or not.
He's told us he thought there were, so I'm probing the basis of that and his understanding at the time. I'll repeat the question. Why would you need to run 3 blocks down to the 63rd car source if you thought there were already people there?
I thought there were people there, but Dominic asked me to go down there. I thought that was how to put out the fires that were down there.
No, I'll record
This
the last
video that we're watching
video, right?
is minutes after you've left the 59th Street car source, right?
Probably
Yes,
do it in the morning before she even starts
Okay.
class.
Ryan Balch,
yes,
and then this reporter,
Yeah.
Rich McGinnis.
yes.
And as far as you know, when you leave 59th Street car source, everybody in your group is still back there, right?
At the car source,
At 59th Street car source,
yes,
everybody's still back there.
yes,
Joanne Fiedler,
yes,
Justin Collette, Dominic Black, Nick Smith, Jason Lakowski, anyone else, they're all still there, right?
at that location, yes.
So none of your group is already down at 63rd Street car source, right?
The other group that showed up after we got done taking the pictures with the, I think I said 2 or 3 vans, I believe they were still down there.
And that was 2 or 3 vans of people that came out with what have been described as melee weapons, right? Like bats and clubs and things like that. Do you recall that? First of all, do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Do you remember seeing those 2 or 3 vans come to that location?
I do.
Do you remember seeing people get out of those vans?
Yes, like I saw, I think there were 6 people in total.
And you saw them with weapons?
I saw them with rifles. I don't think I remember melee weapons.
They were armed.
Yes,
And you believed that they were going to be the ones protecting the 63rd Street car source, correct?
yes,
So at this point in time in the evening, had anybody told you that those folks had left the 63rd Street car source?
no,
So when you're running with this fire extinguisher, you think there's already a group that's designated to that spot that's still down there, right?
yes.
So again, why do you feel that you needed to run 3 blocks down there with a fire extinguisher if you thought there were already people down there protecting that property?
Because Dominic called me and asked me to go put out the fires down there.
And in that phone call, Dominic never told you that any of the members of the 59th Street group that you were part of, he never said any of them were down there at 63rd, right?
Yes,
And he never told you that the group that was supposed to be down there, he never told you anything about them, whether they were there or not there. He never mentioned that. Fair?
it didn't come up.
And you asked the people that you got fire extinguisher from to come with you, right?
Yes,
You were looking for Ryan Balch for backup, right?
I was looking around for him. Yes,
You had already tried to go back to the 59th Street location, right?
yes,
And all of those failed.
yes,
So then you decide to take it upon yourself to head down to 63rd Street to put out fires. Fair?
I wouldn't say that. I would say I wanted to go put out the fires that I was there to do. When I say protect the property, I mean by put out fires. So I went to go put out the fires. I just believe there were people there.
And you brought your AR-15 along.
Yes,
Why?
because it was with me already.
Yeah, but you take that off earlier when you were treating someone, you gave it to Joanne Fiedler, right?
Yes.
So you know how to take it off, don't you?
Yes.
And you can make a choice on your own whether or not to go armed with it or whether to give it to the person who is the lawful owner of it on that date, Dominic Black, correct?
I didn't take my rifle off there because there was nobody I could hand it to. And when I took it off to hand it to Joanne Fiedler, I was in a safe spot in the corner of the building where there were people protecting me at that time right there. When I went to go to the car source number 3 to put out the fire, there was nobody I could hand my rifle to that could protect me while I'm providing first aid to somebody.
But you still knew you had it.
My rifle, yes.
You still knew you had it strapped around your body,
Yes.
and you made a conscious decision to bring it along, right?
Yes.
Why?
That's the answer.
He gave an answer about how he already had it, and we go through it. So,
I did, but I don't really understand.
well, was it simply that, well, I've already got it strapped on, so I might as well bring it along? Is that what you're telling us? You decided to bring along the AR-15 because, well, I've already got it? Is that your answer?
I don't think I was thinking, like, hey, I'm going to take my rifle. I would have because there was people around that could have stolen my gun, and I did. I didn't take my rifle off because I was going there alone. I was going to be running there alone, and I didn't take it off because no one else was there to protect me as I was going there. So that's why I brought it.
For protection.
Yes.
You brought it along down there because you felt like you would need to protect yourself against someone else harming you. Correct?
If that would have happened, I would have protected myself, but I didn't think I was going to be attacked and ambushed.
But you just said you had it for protection. What were you expecting you would need protection from?
Thought we covered much of this before.
I'm specifically focusing in on the time period where he is heading down to the 63rd Street car source. I have not asked him about this yet, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead, but you need to pick up the pace somewhat.
When you decided to bring your AR-15 loaded with 30 rounds down to the 63rd Street car source location, what did you think you needed protection against?
I didn't really think I was going to have to protect myself.
You told us just now you brought it along for protection.
I did, but I didn't think I was going to need to protect myself.
You brought it along for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection? I'm trying to clarify the two different answers that I think he just gave, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead,
Do you understand the question?
Not really.
I asked you why you brought the gun. You said you needed it for protection. I said, protection against what? You said you didn't think you needed protection. I'm confused. Can you help me understand why you're telling us you needed a gun for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection?
I brought the gun for my protection, but what I was saying is I didn't think I would have to use the gun and end up defending myself.
So you, in this video, are running.
Yes.
You run across the screen. Yes.
Yes.
And then I think you testified on direct that as you made it down the block, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you stopped running and you walked for a little while. Is that right?
I jogged and walked occasionally.
Carrying the fire extinguisher and your gun.
Yes.
And you're alone at that point with no backup, right?
Yes.
And you testified that when you got down to the 63rd Street car source, you indicated that you came upon that vehicle we've been calling the Duramax. You know what vehicle I'm talking about?
I do.
And you indicated that when you got there, you walked around that vehicle and you saw a person that you now know to be Joshua Zeminski. Is that right?
I walked up to the Duramax. Yes.
You didn't know Joshua Zminski's name at that point, correct?
No.
You hadn't taken any notice of him at all up until that moment, all night long. Fair?
Fair.
This is the first time that you see that this is a person that comes to your attention. Fair?
Yes.
And you said he had a gun in his hand.
Yes.
And you put the fire extinguisher down on the ground.
I dropped the fire extinguisher.
And then you hear or see Mr. Rosenbaum coming from behind you.
When I get to the Duramax, I step forward, and then Mr. Zminski turns towards me, and he steps towards me. I drop the fire extinguisher, step back, and that's when I see, I go to run back towards 59th Street,
Mr. Rosenbaum is coming.
and then that's when I notice Mr. Rosenbaum running at me, leaving me with no other, right? Mr. Zminski in front of me with the gun. Mrs. Zminski right there, a couple feet away, and then some other people there.
And then the chase happens. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Have you told us everything that you did when that situation just happened at the Duramax?
Yes.
Can we play the iPad, please? The iPad with the drone video. This is exhibit number 73. What are you guys gonna do? No. Okay. Okay. Mr. Rittenhouse, this is a video that has been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 73. This is a video taken by a drone that was hovering south of 63rd at the time that you shot Mr. Rosenbaum. We're going to play the beginning of this video on the iPad, and I'm going to have Detective Howard use the pinch and zoom feature on the iPad to zoom in on the area.
Your Honor, and I'd like to hear outside the presence of the jury.
Time for a break, don't you think? Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any comments now.
Members of the prosecution cross-examines him as Rittenhouse takes the stand in his own defense, charged with 2 counts of homicide after last summer's deadly shooting at a racial justice protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. You've just seen the prosecution questioning Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time of the shooting, about why he brought a gun when he went to the demonstration that night. Now the jury is out of the room as the judge speaks with the attorneys. Let's listen into this piece of it.
I think they went upstairs. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I don't know what the state's going to do next, but I suspect that it's something along the lines of they're going to use the iPad, and Mr. Bayer was talking about pinching the screen. iPads, which are made by Apple, have artificial intelligence in them that allow things to be viewed through 3 dimensions and logarithms. Logarithms, I don't understand it all either. And it uses artificial intelligence or their logarithms to create what they believe is happening. So this isn't actually enhanced video. This is Apple's iPad programming, creating what it thinks is there, not what necessarily is there. And I don't know what's going to happen, but we had this video enhanced. We have testimony regarding it. And this is one of the topics that came up. I asked my expert, I said, do you know of anything that does something like that? Because that was when Detective Antaramian testified about pinching his telephone. And that's what I was told. And that's where I think this is going. And I don't think that it's appropriate. It's wrong.
Mr. Mayor?
Governor, I think everybody in this room has a smartphone, whether it's an Apple iPhone or some other device. And I think we've all taken a photograph or a video at one point or another and used the pinch to zoom in feature. This is a common part of everyone's everyday life. In the olden days, you had a photograph and a magnifying glass, right? That doesn't change the photograph. When you use a magnifying glass to look at words on a paper or a photograph, the magnifying glass doesn't change the image. It doesn't change the pixels on the paper. It doesn't change the words in the photo. All it does is make them easier to see. The pinch and zoom feature on the iPad or the iPhone or an Android phone, whatever device everyone in this room has, does that exact same thing. Now, if counsel has an expert who will say that this is unreliable or distorting the image or something along those lines, even though this is something everybody in this room has done with countless videos and photos throughout the last 20 years, 10 years of our lives here. This is a fact. This is a feature of everyday life in America now, smartphones. If they want to have an expert come in and say it's unreliable and you can't believe what's on that screen, they can do that. We're still in that case. And then the jury can make a decision as to whether or not pinching and zooming on an iPad or an iPhone is tampering with the video or altering the image or unreliable or shouldn't be given any weight. So if they want to make a jury question out of this, they are free to do so. We're still in their case of cheating. But I don't frankly understand or agree with anything counsel just said. I've used my phone, I think probably you have too. I think this is something that everyone's common knowledge, to pinch and zoom on a screen. And that's what's going on. It does not change the image in any way. It just creates it like a stimuli.
Well, I don't know. When I put the magnifying glass up, then it's enlarging the image. It is not altering the image. What he's saying, and I know less than anyone in the room here, I'm sure, about all this stuff. But I'm hearing him to say that they're actually artificially inserting pixels into there, which is altering the object which is being portrayed. And so, you know what, I myself, when confronted with these changes in technology, I actually do is to admit the evidence, but make sure that the finder effect is aware of the fact that it is not the original image and the method by which it's been enhanced. You're suggesting that I should make the defense bring in an expert for it. My thought would be that actually you're the one who's offering the exhibit, so you should be in a position to offer evidence as to the fact that it is not distorting the object which is depicted.
I would submit, Your Honor, that I think it's common sense to everyone in this room that that's not what's going on here. And what counsel is saying about Apple software, algorithms, is not something that people in this room are familiar with.
I thought I heard the expert say on the stand. Believe me, again, this is not something I'm familiar with, But I thought I heard the experts say that you got down from the crime lab, that in fact that there were alterations made by adding pixels. That's an alteration of the image. So I don't have any problem with it being received, but you're going to have someone testify that it's a reliable, I don't want to say mirror image, but because obviously if you insert more items into an area of space, it's going to distort what's depicted.
I think, Your Honor, when usually Zoom maneuver is used on the screen, it actually, it also, it takes the
Yeah.
high resolution of the
Yeah,
scene
100
and
pieces.
it brings it in a point where the pixels are actually spread out more.
I don't, you know what, I'm not gonna accept as accurate what Richards is saying, I'm not gonna accept what you're telling me. I said, if you can offer somebody who's knowledgeable in these areas, the document or I think you should be allowed to use the image. But this is high risk to me. If you insert more data into an area of space where you're wagging your head no, tell me where I'm wrong.
There's no proof in this record that we're doing that, Your Honor.
I didn't say there was proof of that. I said you have the burden of proof. You're the proponent of the exhibit, and you need to tell me that it's reliable.
The exhibit already evidence, Your Honor.
That I know.
The enhanced exhibit is not invalid.
This is not an answer.
Well, if it, then why show it?
I
I mean, the reason you want to show it is so because it enhances the image, right? No, one at a time.
I'll say what Mr. Cross was just saying. The defense has taken videos and photos and them zoomed in on them on many exhibits in this trial. And this is, again, like I said, magnifying glass is not changing the image. What the expert testified to on his software program was that he uses, I think he called it M5 or something like that. It was a software program he was using to create the additional images of the exhibits that were introduced with regard to this drone video. And he talked about what that software program does. He was not talking about the common, ordinary, everyday pinch and zoom feature on the animal. There are two different things, Your Honor. I want to be precise about this because I don't think it's fair to equate the technical video editing software used by the crime lab with pinching and zooming on an iPhone. They're different software programs, different procedures, and I don't think it's fair to extrapolate this. Every one of those jurors.
You have been watching the homicide trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, who you see on screen right there as the judge is talking with both the defense attorneys and the prosecution. In a trial we are taking live to air, which means you've seen some disturbing images, you've heard some profanity, we apologize for that. We're going to have continued coverage of the trial later today on MSNBC, as well as on Nightly News and NBC News Now. We'll see you right back here on MSNBC tomorrow. Deadline White House begins right now. Hi everyone, it's 4 o'clock in New York. You heard Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney's urgent plea for the president to sell the massive infrastructure package in cities around the country during this program yesterday to fortify Democrats ahead of the midterms. That effort begins in earnest in just a few minutes. President Biden will take the stage at an event in Baltimore to tout the benefits of the new infrastructure package, and we will bring you those remarks when they begin. But we start this hour with the boom being lowered on Donald Trump's attempt to stonewall the January 6th Select Committee. A decision by a federal judge overnight handing the January 6th Select Committee a big win in its fight to get their hands on Donald Trump's records. The judge ruling that Trump's claims of executive privilege do not hold up, given that the sitting president, President Joe Biden, has waived the right. The decision reads in part, plaintiff Donald Trump does not acknowledge the deference owed to the incumbent president's judgment. His position that he may override the express will of the executive branch appears to be premised on the notion that his executive power exists in perpetuity, but presidents are not kings, and plaintiff is not president. Trump's legal team has appealed the decision and is asking for the emergency stay of the judge's order until their appeal can be heard. But as of now, the National Archives is set to start handing off Trump's records to the 1-6 committee on Friday. And while those records could help answer some of the biggest looming questions around January 6th,
including what exactly Trump was doing that day, there are signs that the committee is already moving full steam ahead in its investigation and exploring practically every single facet of the Capitol attack. Brand new reporting in the New York Times pulls back the curtain on the committee's work, its scope. Quote, in recent weeks, the committee has hired new investigators, poured over thousands of documents, and heard privately from a stream of voluntary witnesses, from rally planners and former Trump officials to the rioters themselves. The panel has learned details about how Stop the Steal rally organizers used deception to obtain permits from Capitol Police to hold rallies near the Capitol. How Mr. Trump and White House officials coordinated with organizers of the rally, whose attendees would later storm the Capitol, and how deeply Mr. Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was involved in pushing false claims of widespread election fraud. And as the committee's ranking member, Republican Liz Cheney, reminded people in a speech last night, the stakes of their investigation could not be higher. Watch.
We are also confronting a domestic threat that we've never faced before. A former president who's attempting to unravel the foundations of our constitutional republic, aided by political leaders who have made themselves willing hostages to this dangerous and irrational man. In the months since January 6th, I have sometimes heard people say something like, well, what happened was bad, but it wasn't that big a deal because our institutions held. To those people, I say our institutions do not defend themselves. We, the people, defend them.
A burst of momentum in the investigation of the January 6th Select Committee is where we start this hour. Betsy Woodruff-Swan is here, national correspondent for Politico and MSNBC contributor. Also with us, New York Times congressional reporter Luke Broadwater and Harry Littman, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, former U.S. Attorney is here. Luke, this is your reporting. Take us through it.
Hi, yes, Nicole. In recent weeks, the January 6th committee has really ramped up its efforts, especially this week. We've seen now 35 subpoenas go out. 16 of those were just in the past 2 days. We've seen more than 150 witnesses come in. We've seen new investigators be hired. In fact, I believe the whole investigative team is now in place. And so they're really, in the first couple months of the committee, they felt like they were sort of building the plane as they were flying. And now they feel like they have their whole team in place. They have a strategy. They have assignments for different investigators. And they're really getting moved now. And I think you're seeing that this week with this latest.
You're not gonna sleep yet?
Not yet.
Okay. You plug it in here before you sleep.
To split into, we got to know after the fact, Andrew Weissman was working on looking on the outside culture resolution track, and then there were other investigators working on the obstruction track. It seems like the investigation is now in these separate buckets, and I'm gonna ask you to take me through them, but I want to read some of this color because it's so interesting for those of us who've been covering this for many months now. Working out of a nondescript office building at the bottom of Capitol Hill, the committee's investigators have divided themselves into color-coded teams to pursue several avenues of inquiry. They're looking into the money trail. Investigators are scrutinizing the groups that funded the protests that preceded the violence. Planned meetings. The panel's pressing for answers about gatherings at the Willard and other Washington hotels where Mr. Trump's allies who were involved in the effort to overturn the election. Foreknowledge of violence. The most difficult piece of the investigation involves unearthing evidence that Mr. Trump and everyone in his inner circle had foreknowledge that violence was a possibility on January 6th, and whether they took any steps to either encourage or discourage the storming of the Capitol. I want to ask you about that one, Luke, because it seems like we know the answer to knowledge of violence, why it was happening. But explain this effort to understand the knowledge of what was happening ahead of time in light of the kinds of things they were saying. Childlike conduct, Flynn's speech the night before, Donald Trump's using the word fight, fight, fight. What are they really scrutinizing in that effort?
Right, so the examples of what many people would consider incitement, and suddenly the House impeachment managers will use incitement, are in the public record. We know about Rudy Giuliani saying, exhorting the crowd to kick ass. We know people were encouraged to march down to the Capitol. but there's a question underway about whether there was anything more direct, any foreknowledge that any members of Trump's inner circle would have whose crowd could turn violent, and whether they took any steps to stop that or encourage it. And so that is a key question that investigators are probing as they do these interviews. Of course, it will depend how much cooperation they get from some in Trump's inner circle, whether they can put those questions directly to people. As we know, Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Clark have both refused to now cooperate with the committee. I believe actually Betsy broke this story about Jeffrey Clark. So they do need cooperation, but they are getting some. They are getting witnesses come in. Some witnesses have actually surprised.
Luke's shot. I'm going to bring you in, Betsy. Your reporting was cited. We covered it here. But something that I've been curious about and have been asking all of you about is this idea of voluntary witnesses. We know from some great reporting from all of you and some of the great books that have come out since the insurrection that PASOK, then the White House counsel, thought Donald Trump would be arrested that day. We know acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen voluntarily testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee for their report. We know that he's testified and cooperated with the 1-6 committee. I wonder if you can sort of give me the buckets of individuals that you're looking at or sort of following and trying to figure out if
hearing the sound of the
operating witnesses that Luke reports on today.
One of the most interesting buckets are people who actually participated in violence that day. Politico has reported that the committee has been in touch
hearing the sound of
with people
that.
who were engaged in violent rioting to talk to them
Strange.
about how exactly things went down and why they became so horrible. And in fact, federal judges, at least one judge has said during court proceedings that she encourages rioters to engage with the committee as a way of showing that they feel some sort of contrition for the hurt and violence that they were involved in. That has sent an important signal to the hundreds of people facing federal charges for the violence that played out that day. One thing that's always considered in criminal sentencing processes is whether or not the person who was convicted feels contrition over what they did. And now there's been this signal that, hey, if you cooperate with the January 6th election committee, that's
You can hear
in your sentence being slightly more
Is something wrong with the sound card thing or what?
other ones. So that's a key thing that we're focusing on. Of course, also looking at the fascinating different categories of people who the committee is reaching out to, keeping an eye on